Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. We're back with a talk video. This one is a little belated. We're going to cover Admiral Trench. He's not going to be in the game for another 2 months. So there's plenty of time to break this one down, speculate on what I'm reading here and how I think this is going to work out. Usual stuff, the breakdown, developer insights, analysis of the kit, what I'm seeing in the Synergies, and the Omicrons will wrap up with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. Admiral Trench here is going to be a 3-territory war Omi support leader with extortion and tech synergy. He's going to control flow with buffs and debuffs, and the last thing here in the key attributes portion is he's going to be best with non-droid and non-geo separatists. At least that's what they say. We're going to key on this a little bit later. They're being slightly misleading here. In the strategy tips portion, what they highlight is how Django is going to be important. With the shield tech, it's going to give them a starting advantage. Using Django in this way is right now less than desirable since it pulls Django from Maul, but it's not a deal breaker, and it's clear as we go through the kit why Django is going to be the one who benefits. So it's likely going to be altering how we play Maul in the future. The other thing here is the speed is affected by extortion and tech, so make Newt and Watt fast so they take more turns, spread out the tech and the extortion, and speed up the squad. Now, breaking down the kit that we do here, where we just highlight on the key mechanics, cut out some of the extra words to simplify our understanding of how I think this is going to work. The basic unfinished business Omicron ability, special damage to the target, inflict shock, and if shocked, then stun. On Trench's turn, allies with tactical supremacy gain heal over time and protection over time. That lasts for 2 turns. And the heal and protection over time, that's the key mechanic to notate. It has synergies further down that we'll get to, and as long as dispels are limited, these effects will be going on pretty consistently. The Omicron is again territory war. Trench's turn, inflict ability block on the target and reduce their crit damage by 20%, stacking until the end of the encounter. If the target was already debuffed, remove 50% turn meter, and non-droid separatist allies will recover 30% health and protection. This is the first time we're seeing an Omicron on a basic, and it's definitely a worthy one. That crit damage reduction stacks without a cap, and right now does not have a GL exclusion. It adds a massive conditional turn meter removal with a big AoE heal, and with a base stat of 171 speed, it is going to be pretty easy to make Trench pretty fast. He's on the level of a Bosk or Admiral Thrawn with his base stat speed. So the effects of this basic could be pretty significant. With his first and only special, Net Positive, this is a Zeta ability with a cooldown of 3. What we are looking at is a target dispel with special damage, inflict stagger, and non-droid separatist allies mass assist. Non-droid separatist allies also gain tactical supremacy. Trench gains 40% protection up. Other separatist allies gain 20% protection up for 2 turns. What tactical supremacy does is plus 30% crit damage and potency, recover 10% protection at the start of a turn, and if dispelled, recover 40% health. Then gain advantage and foresight for 2 turns until the end of that turn. This is a nice ability here. Reasonable cooldown and a mass assist means it'll do some decent damage regardless of Trench. The protection up is always a nice mechanic. It encourages modding for health. That's something to keep in mind. But the big and key part of this ability is tactical supremacy, since it will be lasting for 2 turns. And tactical supremacy, again from the basic ability, is what is going to cause the heal over times and the protection over times to spread. That means as long as there is no dispel going on, then there should only, you'll only end up not having heal over time or protection over time once every 3 turns. But the other nice aspect of the Tactical Supremacy is it is adding that extra damage and another layer of survivability that is beneficial whether or not it gets dispelled. Now the leadership ability, Feared Tactician, this has got a little bit more going on. We're going to spend some more time in this section. Separatist allies have plus 30% max health, max protection, and potency, and they have plus 10% speed for each ally with tech and each enemy with extortion. That is going to be easy to get to 30 to 40% at early stages in the battle, just after a couple turns. Stat boosts these days on a lead are fairly necessary, especially on older characters. It's one of CG's go-to moves to elevate old squads that are stat sharing. And what that will mean is he's going to be the Grand Arena leader as well, regardless of the Omicrons. Even though Newt is a good leader in his own right, the additional survivability and speed stats are going to be enough to offset the spreading extortion that Newt offers. Whenever a Separatist ally inflicts a debuff on an enemy, they gain 20% offense for 3 turns, that's stacking once per turn, and while a Separatist ally has a tech, they have plus 100% potency. And when a non-Geo Separatist ally gains the Bactoid Shield Generator tech, they self-dispel stealth, and while they have that tech, they are immune to stealth and gain 100% crit avoidance and defense. And that is going to be pretty important because Django is the intended target of this tech, and he's not a tanky character, so giving him that crit avoidance and defense is going to be key to making that all work. Next bullet is while a Separatist ally has heal over time, they have plus 30% counter chance, and with protection over time, they have plus 30% defense penetration. And they're going to have both because the basic from Admiral Trench applies both of those. While an enemy has burning, they can't assist, counterattack, or gain bonus turn meter. So the shield tech mechanic here doesn't necessarily require Django, but we are going to be incentivized to bring Django into this squad because of the burning mechanic. That mechanic is going to be very powerful. Eliminating assist, counterattacks, and bonus turn meter we will want to have on this squad. So if we're going to have that on the squad, then we might want to throw the shield tech onto Django, make him more survivable, and make him more of a nuisance. Because he's also going to have damage immunity to start the battle. So you combine him effectively soft taunting and having damage immunity, that is going to be a very powerful combination. So we will be encouraged to remove Django from Maul Squad. But it may mean tactically Maul just moves over to defense, where having Django is a little less important. Plus, we may have some additional Mandalorians coming to the game soon with Mando Season 3 on the horizon, so that Maul Squad might be seeing a shakeup anyway. So, and you can check out my quarterly speculation video for more on how I think that could shake out. With the Omicron Territory War, non-droid Separatist allies have plus 50% mastery, plus 75% max health and max protection. Separatist allies with tech can't have turn meter reduced, and enemies with extortion will be critically hit if able. Whenever an enemy cleanses a debuff, Separatist allies gain 10% turn meter once per turn. First time each enemy is reduced below 100% health. Separatist allies gain 20% offense stacking and plus 5 speed stacking until the end of the battle. This is another good Omicron, and that stacking offense and speed when they when the enemy is reduced below 100% health. That's really powerful, and that's possibly could be pretty easy to trigger since Dooku ignores protection when he counters. So going up against an AoE heavy team will offer plenty of opportunities for Dooku to accomplish this and to get the full effect out of this Omicron. With the unique ability here, I smell fear and it smells good. This is a Zeta and an Omicron ability. At the battle start, Trench loses 50% max health and gains equivalent max protection. That means just mod him for health, not protection. While Separatist allies are active, they have plus 50% potency. That is in addition to the potency mechanics that were in his leadership. And at the start of a turn, Trench gains protection over time 10%. And while Trench has protection up, he's immune to buff immunity and healing immunity. And his special is the ability that gave him protection up. That lasted for 2 turns. The first time each enemy loses all their protection, at the end of that turn, they're inflicted with fear. And whenever another non-droid Separatist ally is damaged by an attack, defeated, or evades, Trench has a 50% chance to gain 100% turn meter. Whenever an enemy dispels the protection up from Trench, they are inflicted with shock, and that's not evadable or resistible. This part here, the unique, is really intense. This means in addition to how fast he already is, he has a coin flip chance to be taking additional turns constantly if the opponent is attacking. That's more opportunities to put up buffs, call assists, heal. This is a very powerful unique. And that is before we get to the Omicron. Territory War. If an enemy resists a debuff from Separatist ally, they lose 10% tenacity stacking. That's effectively another potency mechanic, and 10% crit damage stacking. First time Trench's health is reduced below 75%, he recovers 100% health and gains foresight, protection up, tenacity up, while a Separatist ally has heal over time or protection over time, the recovery is increased by 15%. Respectively. So again, I'm not a Territory War Omi kind of player, but this one doesn't really impress me. Extra survivability is nice, but there's already a good amount here. It reduces the opponent's damage output slightly, but it's conditional. This is the one that I find to be a little skippable. But to summarize everything that was going on with the Omicrons before we get to the synergy portion, with the 3 of these guys, there's a big theme of survivability, but it's the basic ability and the leadership that I would consider. The leadership would be the first one that I would apply, and then the basic, and skip the unique. But these are good Omicrons, and if you are the type of player who does prioritize Territory War Omicrons, or you like that game mode a lot, this is going to be a good character who will have some interesting mechanics. I'm not sure how much they're going to punch up. Like, this isn't going to be like some of those ones that become like a GL level counter. I think it'll take additional characters to be added to the game, but he's going to be a tough out. And I would not be surprised to see him on defense, but he'll be good on either. On his face, with the synergies, there doesn't really seem to be too much to break down here, but there are a couple things I want to address. Now, they show Asajj here. Asajj isn't going to really make too much sense. There's just not a lot of slots with this squad. They all kind of have their place. This is the obvious one. Everyone could have figured out for themselves. Trench, Dooku, Jango, Newt, Watt with the Tex. Newt will throw out the extortion, but his unique is also going to be very desirable. That if you have the Zeta, is going to be doing that 8% health damage whenever debuffs are getting applied. Dooku is going to be able to counter land stuns, and he is the one that puts everyone under stealth. And Jango will be, with that shield tech, forced out into the open. He'll be starting the battle with damage immunity and will be a very effective short-term tank. Then he gets those extra stats and also applies the burning, which will be preventing the bonus turn meter assists and counters. That's all going to be very huge. But I wanted to consider, because the kit says not to use Geonosians, but when you actually go through it, there is only a single thing that applies to Geonosians, and that is you can't get the benefits of the shield tech if you place it on a Geonosian. That means, other than that, you can use Geos, and you will gain all of the other benefits that all of these characters here gain. Brood Alpha is an option, but I think what we really need to consider Spy. The only question is, if you were to use Spy, then who would you remove? That is the tough portion, but I think you could consider removing Django, throw in Spy. You lose a lot of the bonuses of the burning, but you can still use the shield tech. You would just probably place it on Dooku, and Dooku with his counters, with his Zeta, and how he is going to be gaining protection back pretty consistently. He's going to be tanky himself, and then he'll just be stunning a lot of the field. And what Spy then offers, and you're going to want to have a Relic Spy for this, is there's additional potency, and under the leadership, whenever they inflict a debuff, they're going to get 20% offense stacking. So that means when Spy does the expose ability, Spy will get 20% offense, and that's stacking once per turn. So that isn't going to be a massive thing, but Spy will get a decent offense boost to make those big attacks even more powerful. And it's something that I think we should consider under some circumstances. And what that would allow for is having two pretty decent squads if we don't see additional Mandalorians in the near term. Because some of those counters, like against Sith Eternal Emperor, you do want Django on the squad. So being able to have a little bit of flexibility with this Trench squad by adding Spy could be strategically important. And it's nice because Geos these days are not a very functional squad, so being able to throw some of the characters that we've invested resources in onto this gives us a little added flexibility. And we don't have it on the topics rundown, but I do want to address the gear on Admiral Trent since we have that information available. Maybe in a post-gear update world, this is less relevant, but I still haven't received a brain update, and I still care about it. And depending on how many gearing priorities you still have to do or are simultaneously juggling, the amount of gear can have an effect in how you want to strategize these things. So getting Admiral Trench to Gear 11, and again, that's the staging ground that I like to utilize, and the gear update doesn't change that. What it's done is made that staging ground easier to achieve and a faster place to get to before you start moving up to Gear 12 and Relics. And usually for me, I just move from Gear 11 to Relics pretty quickly once I've prepared in advance for some of those moves. With Trench, the particulars, he does have a Carbanti at Gear 7, and he is an old school Carbanti and stun gun heavy character. He needs 2 stun guns at Gear 8. Gear 9 is where we see the first of the Chirotechs, in addition to another stun gun, and he is going to need 6 sets of Carbantis, 5 sets of stun guns to get to Gear 11, but only 3 sets of Kyros, which is the standard amount you can expect for really any new character. So he needs 300 Carbantis, 250 stun guns. That'll get you to Gear 11. But no stun cuffs, no thermals. That's pretty nice because those pieces are the other pieces that are very demanding and you can burn through pretty quickly. Also, no eyeballs to get to this Gear 10 level, which sometimes, or Gear 11 level, which we sometimes do see. Now, with Gear 11, what we're seeing here is a fairly affordable tier. A couple more Carbantis, but no stun guns, and another Cairo. For his relic tier, this one is also pretty easy to deal with. What we see is one thing in Nubian scanners, one thing in med packs, and a lot of the less common pieces. The finisher is the Cairo prod, which is the more common one. That's a little bit more demanding. But overall, he's a quick to gear character if you prepare in advance. The Carbantes and stun guns will be a pain, even though the gear update, that's still a lot to have to accrue. But these days, not the same amount of effort. You could technically relic him right away if you wanted to, if you prepare, but I won't be doing that. I like to test at intermittent stages and will continue to do so. I think it's nice for us players who are developing our rosters at different rates, who can't always afford to throw gear wherever they want. Now we wrap up with our free-to-play gearing. This is the gearing performed on December 5th. We've been playing a bit of catch-up since I was too busy to cover a few kit videos and do a couple talk videos back in the October range. So this one here, here's a look at where I was looking with the Java requirements at the start of December. Again, I have Java now, but I was working on those farms, getting the Hut Cartel done up. I made a ton of progress on the Hut Cartel after the Thanksgiving period with the double drops. I dropped a lot of crystals on Bosch. So that's why we're seeing Bosch basically at the same star level as the Skiff Lando. Afra with Hondo, he's a cheap farm. So I 3 refreshes and farming him up quickly. All these new characters, I highly encourage you to invest in right away. Do these farms. I would prioritize a lot of new character farms before old character farms, just because how the game is weighted towards a lot of new kits and characters. It's always been my bias. At the end of November, got an additional star on the Profundity. And then at the end of December, I get it up to 6 stars. I've downshifted now where I'm trying to conserve crystals. I don't want to use too many crystals trying to farm up those ships very quickly. I do have the luxury, though, of being in a slightly softer fleet arena. And now that we do have the Profundity at a decent level, I want all my pilots at gear 11, so that's why you're seeing Kanan here. I think he's actually might be my last Phoenix character, or Zeb is. And after Zeb here, that we're doing at the same time, I'm done with the Phoenix. Like, I never thought this would happen. But with a lot of these gear changes, a lot of these resources that made the Phoenix so expensive before are much more manageable. And now with these gear 11 pilots, I can max out these abilities and improve my Profundity even more. Now Sana here, taking her up to gear 11. This is my standard move when we have new characters. It's a lot of Kairos. No more than most. She's like a 2 or 3 Cairo character that's fairly standard. But when you're working on other projects like a GL, those Kairos can be tough to part with. And I've been testing her since. You can check out the old Grand Arenas. At 3 stars, not very usable. Some characters are plenty usable at the lower stars. She's not one. And I'll just take my Savage higher. Relic 3, we were testing them at various levels with the Omicron. Relic 5 is where I would recommend. Relic 3 is not going to work up against a CLS. He won't lose. I believe it's a timeout, but he can't win. And we will wrap it up there. I've got a little bit more time in my schedule these days, so I'm going to try and be a lot faster on the videos and get more videos and other topics out more frequently. The gear update is something I want to address. I want a lowest viable teams video on Third Sister, and there's a number of videos in the backlog that we need to be pushing out to. But thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone. Be excellent to each other. This is still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.